Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Carly P. Riley Show. We have got another financial crime story for you here. This one came out at the end of last month, and it's interesting because it really proves that even well-educated people can fall for some really dumb things. Anybody can fall victim to a scam because there are some really charismatic people out there that can persuade anything of anybody. So there is no shame. There is no shame in being the victim of a scam. There is shame in running a scam. The scam we are talking about today was one perpetrated by a Harvard Business School alumni, specifically on other Harvard Business School alumni. And the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, recently filed a court order to shut this Ponzi scheme down. Let's talk a little bit about it. A gentleman named Vladimir Artemonov. We're just going to call him Vladimir because I can't pronounce the last name properly. So Vladimir graduated from Harvard Business School in 2003. And I don't know what was going on in Vladimir's life, but clearly things were not going well. The last reported job that I saw he had ended in 2008. He was at a hedge fund or a capital management fund until 2008, but it's not really clear what he had been doing between 2008 and 2024. But for whatever reason, Vladimir decided that the option he was going to go with in life was to start a Ponzi scheme. So Vladimir set up a fund called Project Information Arbitrage, which already has a little bit of a scammer ring to it, if we're being honest. It's trying too hard, you know what I mean? Like, if you have to call it information arbitrage, you're probably not arbitraging information. It just feels too on the nose. In any case, that is what he called this. And he started calling up other former Harvard Business School alumni, specifically people he went to Harvard Business School with, I believe were among some of the first victims, people he had like loosely known from class. We'll talk about that because obviously the whole network, oh, I knew this guy at HBS component of this is critical to the whole thing succeeding. And I almost hate to use that word because it's so gross that he was able to get victims for this. So he starts calling fellow Harvard Business School alum, folks he went to class, he went to school with, but not people he was close with. And he says that he has found a way to identify what companies that Berkshire Hathaway has already invested in or has taken a stake in before the general public has realized that Berkshire Hathaway has taken a stake in them. So this is what he's claiming. This is the information arbitrage, clearly, that he is alluding to, basically Berkshire Hathaway. Now, Berkshire Hathaway is the company run by Warren Buffett, super esteemed, massive conglomerate at this point that has done incredibly well for itself. I have covered Berkshire Hathaway quite a bit on this show. And the way that Vladimir says that he was able to get this information was through state insurance filings. That basically by looking through state insurance filings, he could see what companies Berkshire Hathaway had recently purchased or whatever, and that's how he was getting the inside information. And then he would go out and buy those stocks. And I guess the implication was that the stocks would pump once the general public found out that Berkshire Hathaway had bought them. But on every level, this doesn't check out. Though I do understand why somebody from afar, if you squint hard enough, you could kind of believe this because Berkshire Hathaway does have really big positions in insurance companies. That was a big unlock for Berkshire Hathaway was they invested in insurance companies and then the insurance companies would kick back money, float basically, that they could then go and reinvest. And there are, I'm sure, any number of specific disclosures they have to make on the insurance side. So you could see how if a really charismatic salesman said it in just the right way and acts like they're really connected and they went to Harvard Business School with you, so you believe they're probably really connected, you maybe could go for it. But obviously the whole thing was not real. And if you scratch a little bit below the surface, you have to know that this is not real because first of all, if this was a thing that could be done, it would have been discovered long before this gentleman discovered it. Berkshire Hathaway has been a big player for a long time. If there was a way to arbitrage this and to discover what Berkshire Hathaway was buying before they were buying it and therefore make money on a pump after it was disclosed to the rest of the world, that would have been done. You didn't find the one guy who discovered how to do this thing. That's number one. Number two, this doesn't make any sense. I mean, Berkshire Hathaway at this point, the way they trade, for the most part, frankly, adding or subtracting from their existing positions. Berkshire Hathaway is so big, it is very difficult for them to find new companies that they are interested in buying or that would make sense for them to buy. So they're very rarely taking new prominent positions in new companies that they haven't previously bought. They're not finding that many of those kinds of companies. And so the positions that they're taking are not necessarily, once they're disclosed, it's not necessarily moving markets. Anyway, we don't need to go too deep on that. Just a little bit about Berkshire Hathaway and how they trade. Clearly, this was not true. And the reality was all Vlad was doing was taking the money that he was getting from investors, and he was buying like some short-term liquid things with them that were not doing well. So he was losing money. He was then also, of course, buying himself like luxury property and boats and all the things that all these scammers do. And then he was paying back new entrants into the fund with the money from the old entrants in the fund. I have just described literally what a Ponzi scheme is. He was running a literal pure play Ponzi scheme. That's what he was doing. I don't know every in and out of how this Ponzi played out over the year or so that he was running it, but you can be almost positive that what he probably did was get one or two Harvard Business School classmates of his to invest in the fund. And then he was able to go to every other potential investor, many of whom were Harvard Business School alums, but I think there were some outside of the Harvard Business School network. People that he had met through Harvard Business School alum and things were also a part of this, and said, hey, I have these two other Harvard Business School alums who have invested in this fund. And this is where things get so dangerous and so insidious, because for all of these, even the super big ones, perhaps especially the super big scams like your Theranoses, your Madoffs, like part of what allows them to continue and thrive is the fact that people start thinking, oh, well, that smart person must have done due diligence. If that investor group, if that whatever is in, right? In the case of Theranos, it was like if Rupert Murdoch, I think, who had made investments, right? Like if Rupert Murdoch is in, if James Mattis is in, if George Schultz is in, these people must have done their due diligence. This must be a legitimate company. I'll put money in. And the biggest lesson for me here on this Harvard Business School Ponzi scheme and so many of these is like always look into something yourself. Never trust that the other smart person who came before you has actually done the work, because turns out even the smartest people don't do the work. Never assume somebody else has done the work. Now, there's a really, really sad part to this story. And I almost didn't want to bring it up because the way I talk about these, I often like to be kind of lighthearted and we can all have a laugh. And, it's obviously horrible and sad, but also, oh my gosh, right? But the truth is, on this one, this whole Ponzi scheme blew up because one of the victims killed themselves. Oh, it makes me emotional. And I think it's just such a good reminder that while there's naturally, I have this, obviously my audience has this, like we're all fascinated by scams and financial crimes. And I've always been somebody who's interested in this stuff. And I have, I've read the Enron book and the Theranos book. And, obviously I covered the FTX trial. Like the consequences of these things can be really catastrophic and severe. And there is no shame, as I think I said at the top, in being a victim of something like this. Very smart people all the time fall victim to things because a lot of these people are very sophisticated in the way that they perpetrate scams and perpetrate crimes. And the shame is entirely with doing something like this. It is so sick. And this person, Vladimir in this case, continued this Ponzi scheme even after one of his victims killed themselves. So I am so glad and so grateful that this has finally been shut down, that the Attorney General in New York is all over this and on top of this. And I guess I will leave you with just like, stay safe out there. This stuff is only getting harder to detect. I mean, this is sort of a separate one because it wasn't like he was leveraging technology in some specific way, but like with AI, with deepfakes, with everything that is happening technologically and how fast it all moves, I think it is only going to get easier to scam people, harder to detect. And over time, I'm sure we'll all wisen up, but there's just so many new attack vectors at this point in the world. So please stay on alert. And I'll leave you with this quote from Letitia James, who is the Attorney General of New York, who is prosecuting this case. She said, even sophisticated investors can be conned by fraudsters, especially when personal relationships and networks are used to build a false sense of trust. All right, folks, that is our episode for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a comment, a like, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time.